to talk to you guys about what you're doing this week. So you've talked about the different types of crime and you've talked about the causes of crime. And you guys have done a really good job of getting that stuff turned in and getting everything going. Now this is something that is a little bit different that you wouldn't have necessarily, you might not have always thought about, and that's sort of the consequences of crime and what's the impact. So if somebody's committed a crime, who is impacted by that? And it's not just the criminal, and I think we're going to kind of look at what's going on and sort of how that stuff goes through. So obviously I'm going to do similar like to what I did last time. We're just going to talk through. In this one, I noticed last week we had a bit of confusion in some places. So I want to make sure that I can give you guys something that you can use to just kind of listen to as you're going through and looking at your task. If you get some confusion, come back and have a look at this video, find the place that we're talking about that task, and I'll probably help you out quite a lot, I hope. At least that's the whole point to this. But yeah, so as we go through, we're going to look through each task and kind of talk about what's going on. So the consequences, 2 seconds. Logan, can you stop that, please? Can you stop that? It's too noisy. Apologies, guys. I had a construction site going in with a plastic hammer and a nail and some cardboard. That was interesting. Anyways, so when you go through, there's 3 different sort of categories, 3 categories that we're talking about as far as consequences. You're looking at physical, you're looking at social, and economic. Now, the people who can be impacted are these guys. So the perpetrators are the people who are committing the crime. The victims, well, that's pretty straightforward. The family is twofold. It could be the family of the perpetrator, or the family of who's the person committing the crime, or the family of the victim, who are the how it might impact. For example, if somebody has been, I'll tell you guys the story at some point, but I've been robbed at gunpoint, and so whenever that happened to me, I was quite nervous afterwards. The people who did rob me, the perpetrators, they had a huge impact that happened against them because they were arrested eventually and stuff that happened. And because they were quite young and they had an active family, the family was impacted as well. Community was possibly impacted because suddenly the neighborhood that I lived in couldn't really be considered safe anymore in some ways because that was going on. And why our society is like, overall, when you're looking at the US and how everything was with gun control and stuff like that. Logan, you gotta stop. With gun control and everything of that nature, trying to figure out exactly like how did that robbery, it went into a statistics database and went across the board. So there's 3 categories that they can fall in. We talked about those. So yeah, so on task 1, you're gonna look at these physical ones. And I want you to, here it is, create a mind map. Outside, Birdie, no, outside. Go in the hallway, you're going to create. Logan, if I tell you again, you're going to be in big trouble. Now stop it, you're making too much noise. So you're going to go through and figure out the physical and trying to, what are the physical impacts or the physical consequences? It could be something that's done to the person. It could be something that's done like injuries. It could be, you might have seen in the news this week, a lot of stuff looting and different things that's going on in America. It could be damage to the shop, which would be the property or the community overall. So people are scared potentially to walk around. So go through, make up some things for physical. All right, what are some ways that, so go on to that task, what are some ways that this can happen? Then I want you to look at social, do the same thing, just branch off a bunch of stuff, come up with, and then I want you to do one for economic. Okay, so here's some different examples of physical impacts. You can use some of those, but I'd like for you guys doing their mind maps on task 1 to come up with your own. Okay, task 2, you're going through and you're doing another mind map type thing. You're thinking of physical and emotional impact. No, sorry. For the perpetrator. So here's some information about the perpetrator. thinking about the physical and social emotional impact on the perpetrator. So what are some physical impacts that will happen on the perpetrator? So what's going to happen to them whenever they get arrested? What are some social implications? If you get arrested or something along those lines, I want you to think about, as you read through this, answers coming from there, you're doing a mind map off of this as well. So what are some things that are going to be a social impact? Are they going to be able to go out and hang out with their friends the way they would have if they hadn't been arrested or they hadn't committed the crime? Economic impact. Are you able to go to work? I want you to go through, read through these, and then do a mind map where you have different things coming off of each of these, where you're going to come up with, it's not just short-term things, but you're going to long-term impacts as well. So it can make it really hard if you're a felon to do things as you go through. Then you're going to do the same thing with victim. So I mentioned some of the stuff that I was dealing with. So I had some physical issue. Well, I didn't have any physical. I was quite lucky in that I didn't get hurt, or there wasn't a lot of stuff, but I was really lucky in that sense. Social impact, it impacted the way that I was able to interact with people. Economic impact, I wasn't able to drive to work the next day and different stuff, so I could have put my job in jeopardy. I might not have felt safe anymore being on my own. So there's a lot of stuff. Look through the details, add some stuff to yourself if you could think of it, and plug it into there. So for task 4, same thing, you're doing it for the family. Okay? I'm just going to start kind of cruising through now. Task 5, you're doing the same thing for the communities. If suddenly that community starts being a dangerous place, or business is going to want to be opening there, or if it's a place that commonly gets robbed and things are going bad, is that a place where people are going to want to move and buy their houses? What's going to happen to how much the houses are worth and different things like that? And overall, wider society. And that's where you're going to do the same thing. So high crime figures makes everyone afraid of crime. There's loads of different stuff. It goes into politics and stuff like that. So you're going to do the same thing for wider society, where you do things. Ideally, I'd like to have at least 4 or 5 minimum coming off of each one of these. All right, task 7, you're looking at case studies. So there's there's 2 case studies. All right, so you're going to look at case studies, which is examples of where things have actually happened, and you're going to need to do some of your own research and make 3 more mind maps. So it's a mind map week. I know we've had quite a lot. You guys have done reports. You guys have made bar graphs and pie charts and different things. So this one's kind of focused on a lot of mind maps and stuff. So you're going to read through these, and then you're going to create so one of those is for Karen Buckley. So you put her name in there. And what were some physical impacts of happened to her? What were some of the social impacts that happened? What are some of the economic impacts? And then you're going to do the next one would be on Alicia McPhail. And you're going to do the same thing with that. If you need some room, make sure you can move these around. Draw the lines off. If this is easier for you to do, maybe this week it might be easier to do if you've printed it off. That might be a good option as well. Okay. And then I want you to do one of your own. So I want you to find your own case study, maybe something that's happened to somebody, and then do another mind map of one that you've found. So I'm giving you number 1, number 2, number 3. I want you to find, it could be a victim, it could be a person who's committed a crime, it could be a community. It could be an overall impact, like overall all of Scotland, what's happened and stuff like that. And then task 8. So this one is actually, this whole thing isn't going to be taking you as long. And I know we've had some problems with maybe exactly what we should and shouldn't be including in our PEEs. I've been writing a lot of the same feedback going to all of you, a lot of you about, you could do this in your PEE, you could do that in your PEE. I've had some questions about people's not completely understanding what they should be putting in, not to be including and stuff like that. So the question that we have is a 6-mark question. So I really want 2 sentences. Stay in the living room. I really want 2 sentences that can kind of break this down. All right, so I really want you to be able to go back, look at your notes. So if you look here, Describe, stay out of the kitchen. Sorry. Right, so describe in detail the consequences of crime. So you could do 2 consequences of crime on the victims, or you could do, you could plug in, sorry, detail the consequence of crime. You could do 1 consequence of crime as something that specifically happens to victims, or you could do it on wider society. So you could do 1 on a victim. So 1 is, 1 consequence of crime on a victim is that they feel anxious. Explain what that means. Explain why they may feel anxious. And then say an example of a crime that would make them feel anxious. Then you could do another one for the victim. You could do one for the perpetrator. You could do one for any other one that you want. So that's 2 PEs. And if you want some extra practice, which I think is a good thing to do, I would maybe build on this. There's pretty regularly a question that goes on that looks something like this. Okay. Yeah. So if you have any questions, come back and send me an email. Put something on the chat bubble. Figure something out as far as just get in touch with me, ask. I'd rather you ask me questions when you're struggling, that way I can get you back so that you don't do it possibly the wrong way or need a bit of extra work or something like that. I'd rather you get it right the first time. Go and sit on the porch now. Go and sit on the porch. I'd rather you ask questions the first time before you do it so that we make sure we're getting it done right all the time. Okay, I don't want you guys to do it when you're not completely sure. Take your time, send me an email. Let's see what we can do to get it all figured out and go from there. Okay, so there's your final task, which is a 6 marker. So you're going to kind of be plugging these things in and going for it. Okay, I think these should actually be like that though. So booklet 8 task, and then there's some extra ones. So in general, what are some consequences of crime? All right. All right. Take care, guys. Let me know if you have any questions. Sorry for my children getting interrupting the lesson numerous times. All right. Take care, guys. Bye.